Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Episode 203, off to a turbulent start. My cousin, Adam the Jock Strozinski, might be in need of a pick-me-up here. Hopefully this podcast recording for him allows him to pick up his mood, and we can go on and talk about Detroit sports. Welcome, cuz, to the podcast. What's up?
You know, if I didn't have shit luck, I'd have absolutely zero luck. You ever have a love-hate relationship with something, anyone, just in general? Yes, no, maybe so?
Not really. I mean, at some point in time, you do start to realize, and I think I told you, that I've accepted that I got shit luck. And so when I get good luck, it makes it that much more exciting. But when I know, I can understand when you're going through tough times, it's so frustrating. But I look at it like this. If you didn't have bad luck, then we wouldn't have things to talk about on the podcast. I wouldn't get to see your angry side. I think this is going to be one of our better shows. When you're revved up and passionate, I think we're ready to go. So what's the source of your frustration?
So I've got this computer. It's like the wife paid a pretty penny for it. Something close to $2,000 for it, $2,000 laptop. And I absolutely hate it. It's the bane of my existence. And I tell her I hate it all the time, which then creates an issue because she went out, she spent a lot of money on something for me. So it's like getting a gift and you absolutely hating the gift, and then you telling the person who gave you the gift how much you absolutely hate it. So it's not a good look at all. On top of it, I've sat there in this gift that I was given. I sit there, I use it for everything. I use it for the podcast. I use it for doing different types of video and audio editing. And it's, you know.
This is the one you put all the fancy stuff that you've been getting as of late. Oh, okay. So it's the hub now.
Yeah, basically it's got everything. It's got everything that I need. It's not real intuitive, though, and it probably would have been better for me to, I don't know. The way I looked at it, I wasn't going to get anything better for the next couple years, you know? And I had no plans of getting rid of it. I was going to have to use it. Anyways, the thing's a total pain in the butt to use. The keyboard is now shot on it, apparently. It's got a real tricky kind of mouse to it. I don't know. It's weird and it's touchy. Anyways, it has become, over the last 2 years, the biggest pain in my butt. And now the keyboard shot on it. I've got certain people telling me it's going to be at least $300 to sit there and check it out. I could buy like a USB hookup for one. I could buy one that you could just kind of plug in and whatever. I've already had to pay like $25 for the guy at Toshiba to sit there and tell me that, yeah, your keyboard shot. Yeah, no kidding, guy. I already know. He's like, well, you know, we could sit there and you could maybe try to do it this way. You could try to do it that way. And then I'm sitting there trying to work on the keyboard today, maybe to pop it off and try to replace it. And then I've got my wife over my shoulder. You ever have, I don't know if you have a wife like this, or if you've ever known anybody who has a wife like this, where she sits over your shoulder telling you how you're doing everything wrong. It's like, yeah, I know. No kidding. Okay, you can just go sit down. Quit talking to me. You just sit there and you work my last nerve. Anyways, this computer that I have is the bane of my existence right now, and it's screwing a lot of things up for me at the most inopportune time. So I hate my life right now.
With that said, let's talk about the Detroit Tigers. Oh, my goodness. I feel for you, though. Honestly,
you don't.
I really don't.
You don't.
No, I'm like, you know
don't.
What? This is kind of trivial compared to what else is going on in the world of Detroit sports. Things like that. You mean the Tigers' 8-game losing streak isn't pissing you off? The Pistons and Wings draft?
What are you talking about? They're on a streak right now.
Oh, my gosh.
They've won a couple games.
Come on now. I'm not bipolar with the team. I have already planted my flag. I already know where they stand and things like that. I'm not going to go on the roller coaster with the Detroit Tigers. But you look at the drafts from the Pistons and the Wings. You look at what's going on around the entire sporting landscape in Detroit, And then you had some fatal news from Little Caesars Arena. Everything up until this point has been relatively calm. The construction has been going well, but a report earlier on Wednesday said that, a man 46 years old fell to his death. So you look at what's going on around town, there's a lot more pressing things really going on than a keyboard laptop. You look at it like this, okay? Lesson learned. Everything that goes wrong can be utilized as a lesson learned. Next time you say, look, when you're going to buy a present or invest in a 4-digit costing present, you got to do a little bit more research and say, look, just come to me and things like that. And that way you avoid all of this kind of kerfuffle and things like that. So I hope you feel better. But I know when you're looking at things that are so important like computers and things that you really use every day, it sucks when they, especially like, when there's maybe ambient noises from a podcast or when there's something that you really want to happen and it doesn't. I count it to one of those days, and you just hope for the next day to be much better, and I think it will. It will turn around, because remember, you had an amazing stretch there where you got to go on vacation, you got to have fun, you got to party with your boys. It can't be all gravy, baby. It's a scale. You got to take the good with the bad, and that's the counsel I would give you as your confidant and your friend, is that you got to take the good with the bad, or if it continues, throw back some whiskey, some Johnny Walkers, and let's forget about it and get faded and on to the next show, on to the next thing. You know what I mean?
Sure. Let's just talk Tigers.
Let's talk Tigers, baby.
You're just like saying words at this point. And
no problem.
A lot of stuff's just kind of going, and I'm just about to lose it. So let's just talk Tigers. You know what? Let's just start there. Let's start Tigers here. And, I myself was surprised Brad Ausmus, after that awful road trip, was not just canned before they even got back here. Somehow he finds his way back on the plane. They end up back in Detroit. He sits there, and this team is able to sit there, churn out a couple wins against Kansas City. At this point, it looks like his job may be safe. I don't understand how he still has a job. I thought for sure they were going to sit there and leave him in San Diego. That seemed like the thing to do. I'm totally shocked and amazed that this guy is still coaching. And look, a lot of the issues with this team, they're not Brad Ausmus' fault. They're not. It's not his fault that this team is so poorly constructed. If you really want to look at what the major issues are with this team, you can sit there and you can point to who the general manager is. I think a lot of issues fall on the general manager. But the fact that Brad Ausmus is still doing his day in, day out job blows my mind.
One of those things where when you look at it, I guess you could say they are showing him respect. And I do believe the reason why he hasn't been fired is management knows, the owner of the Tigers knows, that he's been saddled with the worst bullpen maybe in the history of Major League Baseball. They've made moves in flux, and it's really not the majority his fault. You got Miguel Cabrera, you got Victor Martinez, you got Ian Kinsler, all having down years. And I think what they're doing is they're evaluating Brad Ausmus on his first year, where he took a team that was super talented, on the cusp of winning the World Series, a team that many felt could do some things. And he got a team, took it over, got to the postseason where his inexperience showed, and he got outmanaged. But I really do believe that they feel like, look, we're going to ride this out, and continuity could help this team, even if we go through a rebuild, because of the fact that they're looking at his intangibles. He's good in the clubhouse. He's good with the media. There's situations where they kind of want stability. And in the end, I don't think that when they survey the landscape, here's Brad Ausmus' luckiest factor that he's got going for him. And I think that is what's keeping him in the chair, is when you survey the landscape, there's nobody young and upcoming that you could just say, go get him and do that. Well, who are we talking about? You're talking about Lloyd McClendon, has been retread. You're talking about Omar Vizquel, huge question marks because he's never done the job. So there's nobody up and coming that's just going to go, boom, let's go get him. If there was a Joe Madden available now, if Terry Francona was available, if there was a manager out there that had pedigree, that had a World Series ready to go and was waiting, there's nobody out there. So that's why when you look at the total picture, I can kind of understand they're not going to just make a quick move like the fans want, like you and I want, like everybody wants. But would it behoove them to make a change for change's sake? Yes. Are they going to do it? No. So we just have to, unfortunately, bite the bullet, realize it's not happening, and we just got to keep watching the games and realize that this 10-game homestand, many people are looking to as it. But reports are swirling that even if they are successful, it's only going to be used to enhance trade bait and enhance the market for the guys they want to get rid of. So if you see JD Martinez whacking home runs these next 10 days, and you see Justin Wilson going out there and performing really well, it might be a situation where they're being showcased, and it's not like they're going to really keep this team together anyway, even at this point in time. So when I look at it and talking about Brad Ausmus, unfortunately, we just have to accept the fact that he's the guy until it's made, and maybe if he's going to be gone, it won't be just him. It'll be Avila and him together in one foul swoop.
If you sat there and you looked at the general manager and you looked at the manager of this team, if you had to put the finger on who the major issue is, who would it be? Would it be the general manager, or would it be the actual manager in the clubhouse?
I would say, looking at it, the entire organization. I would say the general manager, the scouting staff, the pitching staff, the hitting staff, everybody. I think we need a complete fresh start, because if you ask me who gets more of the blame, I'm going to tell you it's Avila, because he put this together. There's a lot of bad contracts on this team, and there's no real hope in sight. Because, unfortunately, when we look at it, you got a bad deal, Jordan Zimmerman. You got a bad deal, Miguel Cabrera, because it's looking like, he might be injury plagued. You got a really bad deal with Victor Martinez. And you're looking at it now and you're going, okay, who's up next to replace all these guys? Not too many options that we're sitting here comfortably going, yeah, let's go replenish the minors. The minor league system is ranked very low across Major League Baseball. So it's looking more and more like, the homestand is going to be it in terms of the perception of the club. But I really do believe the phone's ringing as we speak. As we're recording this, Avila's probably taking some preliminary phone calls, looking at J.D. Martinez, looking at Justin Wilson, maybe looking at Justin Verlander. A report came out on Wednesday, kind of lit up our website, in that it was reported that Justin Verlander is going to hit the trade market in the next 2 weeks. So everything's out there on the table, and it should be. I'm of the opinion that they're trying to balance public relations and trying to keep the fan base invested with actually selling. So that's where we're at. It's not like this team's going to be staying together. It's a foregone conclusion in my mind. So the question that you would ask is, are you ready? Are you prepared now to jump in the big boy chair and start hearing names of people being traded, starting to go through these rumors? Are you ready now for the deconstruction of the Tigers? Because it's coming. I think we're right there. If you're looking at it like the Tigers are now sitting in the plane, they're ready for takeoff. They're surveying the landscape, and now we're ready to take off and start selling. It's coming. I think it's coming.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And here's the thing. If we're to sit there and to break this down by players, I kind of want to gauge who you think you could sell and maybe what you can get for these guys, all right? So on this roster, I think we both have come to the conclusion that J.D. Martinez, he's probably going to go.
He needs to go because you're not going to get nothing for him. There is no indication by anybody's standards that he wants to stay here.
Well, has he said that he does not want to be here?
Listen,
has he said that?
But
I saw, because he hasn't said that. That's not been said. But the perception. This is perception. The perception is that you're not going to be able to re-sign him because he's going to want too much money.
Exactly, because it's similar, because I go by experience. Max Scherzer had the same situation. There are talks ongoing. Look at it compared to what's going on with Stafford. You hear the rumblings that it's coming. Where's that coming from? From the agent. You would obviously agree that then if the contract talks were close, that the agent would then sprinkle out across the landscape that we're getting close. JD loves the city of Detroit. What are you hearing now? Crickets. You're hearing nothing. So that means that there are shut down negotiations, that the talks are nowhere near, and you would indicate that, yeah, probably the agent knows that the Tigers are not anywhere near financially responsible enough to sign him. So it's pretty much, JD's told you when you don't sign the deal that was already initially offered, JD wants big-time bucks, and it's not going to be with the Tigers, so it's
JD deserves big-time bucks. So you're probably going to have to trade JD because you're not going to be able to sit there and you're not going to be able to sign him because you have too many bad contracts on your book. So JD is probably gone. I think we both agree with that.
Yes.
Okay? You've got a guy, and there seems to be a lot of conversation and a lot of talk about a guy like a Justin Wilson. People want him. He looks like he's a formidable arm in your bullpen. And that's absolutely the case. He is a formidable arm in your bullpen. You don't want to get rid of him. You shouldn't have to get rid of him. But you know what? He might bring you in the best haul, so you might have to get rid of him. There's another guy out there, a guy like a Miguel Cabrera. He's a guy who you, for years now, have been opining to get rid of. And I don't know if you can necessarily move a guy like that based purely on his contract. Also, another guy out there who you just said, the rumors are starting to swirl about a guy like a Verlander. Now, he might be able to be moved. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think if the Tigers are to move him, they're going to have to eat a lot of that contract. Justin Upton. There's a guy who I think we both would love. It went somewhere. I don't think anybody's going to take him because, again, another ridiculous contract. Did you see the problem here with these Tigers? There's a lot of guys on the books that have ridiculous contracts.
So now if you want to throw it out there, because I know I say things, but if I were to tell you, okay, if we commit to a rebuild, maybe we were talking about it lightly. Maybe you say, you know what? There is absolutely no untouchables on the Detroit Tigers. And as of June 28th, we say, look, Michael Fulmer's now available as well. We're starting from zero. No Justin Wilson, no Michael Fulmer, no Jordan Zimmerman. Nobody on this current roster potentially could be untouchable if the onus is, look, we're starting today from zero. Michael Fulmer could potentially get you a huge haul, okay? Because we're not talking about next year. Of course, if you're talking about next year, there's no way you trade Michael Fulmer. If you're talking about in 2 years, there's no way you trade him. But look, let's say I'm talking to you about 2021, or I'm talking to you about 2022. Because if you're looking at it from a long-term perspective, maybe Michael Fulmer, might not be here when the time comes when this team is ready to win the World Series. Maybe, unfortunately, you need way too many parts to get you over the hump. Then there is value in keeping Michael Fulmer, because maybe Michael Fulmer can get you 3 guys. Maybe Justin Wilson can get you 3 guys. Maybe JD Martinez can get you 3 guys. Now you got 10 guys, or maybe multiple organizational changing minor league prospects that in 5-6 years can come up. And then when you're ready to compete in 2021, 2022, then you reopen the books, you open your checkbook, and then add that last pitcher that you need. That may be something the fan base has to get used to hearing, is that because there's no talk about Michael Fulmer being traded, maybe that's in the works as well. I think if you want to commit to a rebuild, you can't say, well, no, not him, no, not him. This Tiger team is nowhere near championship quality, nowhere near World Series quality. You can sit there and believe it if you want to, but if you want to commit to a rebuild, we might just start to have to say, look, a guy like Michael Fulmer, who everybody loves, we got to let him go.
You do realize that he wouldn't become a free agent until the year 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would do you no good to trade a guy like Michael Fulmer. I understand you could get some stuff back, but Michael Fulmer is one of those pieces that you want to build around. A guy like a JD Martinez, he's on the trading block. A guy like maybe Justin Verlander, if you're going to eat some of that contract, he's on the trading block. A guy like Miguel Cabrera should probably be on the trading block as well if you're going to eat some of that contract. You've got other guys that you could possibly put out there to try to get something back, like a Justin Wilson. You could possibly sit there and trade a couple of your other bullpen arms that you maybe have to maybe get something in return. But a guy like a Michael Fulmer, that's a piece. See, Michael Fulmer and JD Martinez, I feel, are 2 pieces that you should be sitting there insulating this ball club with. Those are 2 pieces you want to sit there and you want to try to get this rebuild started with. JD Martinez is going to cost you too much money. So you're going to have to trade him, and hopefully you can get something back to sit there and bolster this ball club, whether it be a positional player or whether it be an actual arm. Michael Fulmer's a guy that I'm not even contemplating about trading. If there is one untouchable on this roster, Michael Fulmer's that one untouchable guy. I think his potential is so high, and again, there's a scary word, potential. I think his potential is so high, and I think what he's already shown you is that he has the ability and the capability to be able to go out there and to do things.
But here's what you asked me. You said, okay, who's likely to be traded? Who's likely to be put on the trade block? Okay, now if
you think Michael Fulmer's likely to be traded?
No, I'm saying who should be potentially put on the trade block. If you're an opposing GM and you're calling the Detroit Tigers, the first name you're going to talk about is what potentially could we offer you to get Michael Fulmer. You're not going to try and go out there and try to trade for Miguel Cabrera. You're going to offer, okay, Miguel Cabrera, we need this much. You got to pay some of the salary. You got to do this and that for us. That makes it really hard for the Tigers because they're cash strapped. They don't want to be paying for Miguel Cabrera when he's playing for another team. Now you look at some of these other guys. As fans, we can say, yeah, I want to unload Ian Kinsler. Yeah, I want to unload Justin Wilson. But you got to remember, the opposing GM is going to want them. So if we want the 2nd and 4th ranked prospects like JD's going to get, then you got to ask yourself, if we want the next talent that's going to come up in 6 years, if we want a couple of those guys, you're in essence saying, for a Michael Fulmer, I would need your top prospect, maybe your top 2 or 3 prospects, maybe 2 prospects, and an everyday player that's an above 300 hitter. And so all we're saying is that a guy like Michael Fulmer could bring you 3 players instead of 1, and then in 5 years from now and 6 years from now, when you need that last piece, then you go out there and maybe you reacquire Michael Fulmer when he's a free agent and you pay him that big bucks. And basically you just let him go now for a couple more assets.
Then you're right back where you're at now.
No, you're not. You have 4 prospects and you have Michael Fulmer. if there was a tough
But
decision,
as far as money goes, you're right back where you are, because you're going to have to go out there and you got to pay through the nose for the guy.
you're going to have to pay through the nose for the guy. But the idea is this. If it's not Michael Fulmer, and it might not be, I'm just saying in terms of commitment to rebuild, if there's another guy besides the guys we've talked about, there's nobody else if you really look at it. Who is a player a GM could target that could get us talented individuals? Across the landscape, what people are not going to realize, and they're probably going to be unhappy to hear this, the haul you're going to get back for these guys, is it going to be great? I'm telling you, if you look at it, Justin Verlander, what's he going to command? Everybody knows he's aging, and his stuff is, he's around a 500 pitcher. So he might be utilized by a contending team that might give up maybe a fifth prospect in the organization. But what do the Tigers have, if you realistically look at it? What asset do they have that could get you a 1 or 2 level prospect in an organization? Nobody. Michael Fulmer. That's about it. Nothing. So we're asking for, hey, let's trade Ian Kinsler for your second-ranked prospect in your organization. All you're going to do is get a big fat click. Okay, we want to trade you Justin Wilson. That guy, if the time is right, could get you something good if a team is desperate.
Here's the thing. If you believe in your scouting and you believe in what your guys can do, I don't think trading a guy like Ian Kinsler and getting, I don't know, another organization's 4th or 5th best prospect is going to hurt. I think that actually helps you out a lot, because you alleviate that salary. You've got guys on this roster who can step in and immediately fill that role. Maybe not hit as well as he does and maybe not field as well, but they can sit there, because you got to realize you still got to play baseball games. You still got to get games done. I mean, we're not even halfway through with the season yet. You still have ball games that you got to go out there and try to win, or at least pretend to try to win, right? So you can roll Andrew Romine out there. You can roll Dixon Machado out there to sit there and play second base every single day. That's fine. If you get a 4th or a 5th level prospect from some organization, I think that's going to help you out in the long run. That makes you a little bit of a better team, especially financially. That's what the big problem is with this team. They're financially strapped. They said that they're done paying all this money for all these players. We got to sit there. We've got to dial it back. We've got to sit there and start to roll guys out there from our own farm system, which you have nothing on. So you've got to go acquire prospects. It's time to elevate some of these players. You got a guy like Presley who can sit there and come in and he can fill in and he can play generally every single day for you, whether it be in the outfield or even if he's got to kind of sit there and pick up some infield duties. He's a rotational player. It's fine. JD Martinez, you can sit there and trade away. You can get, you're not going to get their number 1 prospect, but you can get maybe their 2nd and maybe their 4th. So you take JD Martinez, you trade him away, you get a 2nd and a 4th. You trade Ian Kinsler away, you maybe get a 5th level prospect. Avila would be a nice platoon catcher for somebody. You can trade him away, maybe get a 5th or 4th, maybe a level prospect from another organization. So, I mean, right there, you just sat there and you traded away 3 guys and you got 4 quality prospects. You just got to sit there and you got to fill up that farm system. It's all about going out and getting guys who can sit there and eventually help out. And that's what you can do. And then if you want to look at the bullpen, you want to look at your relief pitching, I mean, you can sit there, you can trade Justin Wilson if you really want to. I don't. I think he's more of an asset than he is a liability, especially going forward. He's a guy who, now you finally have a piece in your bullpen. What's been like the biggest weakness of this team for years? It's been the bullpen. And he comes in and, yeah, he's a little bit inconsistent, but this is a guy who's playing a brand new role as closer. He was never a closer before. He comes in and does an all right job. He's a guy who I think can grow into the position after watching him pitch a couple times, So I think you've got guys here that you can trade away, get some assets back, help shed some of that salary, and they've got to be able to sit there and be able to trade some of these players away. My big hang up would be if you were to sit there, turn around, and you were to trade a guy like a Justin Wilson, just because I feel like his potential is so high, plus he's under control for so long. And Michael Fulmer's not even an option to me at this time. You can't call about Michael Fulmer. You just can't do it. I'm not going to take calls on Michael Fulmer. If you're calling me about Michael Fulmer, you've got to be promising me basically the world. Just because Verlander's coming to the end, man. He doesn't have too much time left. I know every now and then he goes out there, has a real nice game like he had the other night. But Verlander also has those clunkers. So you got to realize Verlander's going to start winding down at some point. And Daniel Norris hasn't shown me enough to be that number 1 guy, that guy who's going to come in and fill that role. Michael Fulmer has, in the very short time that Michael Fulmer's been here, he's proven to me that he could be your future ace of this ball club. And if I'm going to sit there and have to pick between Daniel Norris and Michael Fulmer, I'm going to take Michael Fulmer all day. And Michael Fulmer is going to be my Justin Verlander replacement. And that's just kind of how it's going to be. What I'd like to do is I'd like to move Jordan Zimmerman out of here somehow. I don't know, put him on a boat and ship him somewhere.
Tigers 10-game homestand. Many people are counting on them to win 7 to 9 games. It might be tough, but
good luck.
You're playing the Kansas City Royals. They're a 500 team. You're playing the Cleveland Indians, so you have an opportunity to do some things. But I guess best case scenario is probably you go 6-4. I just think the 8-game losing streak was the detriment of the team. I think that's going to be a focal point for this season. When you look at the 2017 season, losing 8 games right in that stretch was pretty much the death knell, and everyone's now opening up the subject of selling, and that's just where this team is, and I think everyone's kind of starting to accept that. And as long as you continue to make these moves slowly, K-Rod was blown out in the last week, so that improves your bullpen significantly because, look, you've inserted Rondon on a couple of occasions, and while everybody was nervous about Francisco Rodriguez and the gas can that he became towards the end of his career, Rondon is a little bit better, gives you a little bit more stability at that spot. So you got to remember, this team has been in flux since the start of the season, and slowly but surely, maybe it is too late, but they are getting rid of the crumb bums one by one, and I'm thankful that they're doing it. It was a little bit too late for Francisco Rodriguez, but at least at this point in time, I do realize that each and every game is win-win. If the Tigers win and the guys perform, that ups their trade bait. And hell, if they want to fool themselves and believe that they're still in contention, then at least you sell a little bit of hope, and we can at least get to some meaningful games in September before it all comes crashing down. So at this point in time, I think it's win-win. I think it's going to be an optimistic time for the Tigers. I think if it's realistically done properly, you can rebuild this team the right way.
What did you think when K-Rod was released?
Yes, good.
It kind of came across as a surprise to me.
Surprise?
I seen it come. I didn't expect them to do it. I didn't expect them to pull the trigger on it.
It was bad, bro. It's a grand slam, and the way
it was, and everything that led up to it, where he sat there and called out Ausmus and Rich Doobie. Yeah, it was bad, and it was needed. But I thought it was needed a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
I just didn't think they were going to pull the trigger. So when it came across my phone, I was like, "Whoa, what the hell just happened here?"
No, don't be surprised. I think the infusion of Mikey Matuk, Bruce Rondon, Romine as a defensive replacement has really helped the team a little bit, given him a spark. During Tuesday's game, Matuk had that great play that can be a spark, really helped out Justin Verlander. It's good for Mikey Matuk to get some at-bats and to do some things. So you are looking for some unsung heroes, and if you can find it to get through this next 10-game stretch, it's probably better than losing them all and really having the fan base erupt. So that's all we got to do is game by game, week by week, continue to make steady improvements. And people are right, man. It really feels like we've been talking about 3 seasons with this team in only the course of 75 games. My God.
I know.
But
it's been so brutal this year.
No doubt about it. Speaking of brutal, we got to talk about the Red Wings. After the timeout, I want to get your sense because I was a little bit excited from the draft, and then I come to read regarding what's the reaction to what Kenny Holland did, and it's like a little bit opposite of what I was thinking. So we'll talk about the Red Wings and your perception as to what the hell's been happening the last month with the Detroit Red Wings. Stay with us. I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a place to host our recorded audio. And thank goodness we found Podomatic.com. It's a great host site. We have literally no problems at all sharing our links that are created by Podomatic. When Adam and I record a podcast, boom, upload it to the host site Podomatic, and then within minutes, all our friends can hear it, all the world can hear it, and they can hear Adam and I rant and rave, yell at each other, and that's all due to the success that we've had working with Podomatic. If you're looking to start a brand new project and you want to email Doc and ask how do we get this podcast to where it's at, no problem at all. Message anytime. And one of the things I'll tell you is you need a great host site. You need a place that's reliable, that people can hear your podcast with no problems. And the only place that I've recommended anybody that's messaged us is Podomatic.com. Yeah, baby. Anytime you hear that music, I feel good. Ready to go to battle, ready to duel as episode 203 rolls along. Cause you've been peeking into what's been going on with the Red Wings. The NHL draft occurred. And I guess when it was all said and done, nobody really liked what the Red Wings did. There's only one player that everybody kind of said, okay, good, you got a goaltender. Everybody else that people are looking at objectively was saying that, look, Kenny Holland stretched for everybody. I mean, you had some really in-depth knowledge and perception regarding where these players were ranked, where they thought they were going to be drafted, and they were not even holding back at all. They were like, look, this player was ranked 38th, or this player was ranked 120th, and the Red Wings took him 38th. What the hell is going on? And universally, the Red Wings draft was panned, and it was looked at as one of the worst drafts in the entire league. And I look at it and I go, wow. And I guess I had a little different perception of it because I kind of had felt like Kenny Holland knows this is a long-term rebuild, and he's kind of working under the assumption that, hey, I'm not getting fired. I'm going to be in charge of this whole mess, so we're not going to be good this year. We're not going to be good next year. So I'm going to take a lot of guys that could develop in 5 years when everything's ready and this is all turned around. And I'm not going to take guys potentially like a Velarde that are ready to go now because our team's going to suck now for the next 3 years. So when I looked at it from that angle, I wasn't angry. I looked at it like Kenny Holland knows, oh shit, this is bad. We got 4 years to kind of look at it. So I'm going to take guys that are going to be projected to potentially be good in 4 years, like a Rasmussen. And if I hit, boom, now I got a core of Larkin, Rasmussen, Athasaniu, all in their prime, and it could be a home run. So I guess people are maybe wanted it both ways, where they wanted guys to improve the team now, where I think Kenny Holland has kind of basically said it, and maybe you're not hearing it right, maybe everyone's ears are clogged. He said, in essence, maybe not in the nicest way where he said, don't expect cups, but he basically said, we suck. So why is everybody's panties all up in a bunch with this draft?
Okay, so here's the thing. With the NHL and with hockey, it's really, really difficult to project how guys are going to play and where they're going to be at when they come into the league. So let's just get that out of the way first. It's not like the NFL where you can sit there, you can watch, I don't know, a guy who plays football for 4 years, and you're like, wow, this guy's going to be great when he makes it to the league. It's not like that.
Thank you.
It just doesn't work. The NHL, you're not watching these guys play. Their midget hockey, you're not watching them play. Any of their major junior hockey, you're just not watching this stuff. The big issue is the guys who do watch this stuff, the guys who are really invested in it, the guys who sit there and track the analytics and track the data, they basically have come out and said Ken Holland totally blew it this year. Blew it. And this is the thing. This is where Ken Holland used to prove his worth. This is where he sat there, used to puff out his chest and, hey, that's cool. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take this guy from Russia that you have no idea who he is, and he's going to turn out to be Pavel Datsyuk. And we took him in, Datsyuk was, a 6th-round pick, I think? You know, we're going to go out there, we're going to get our future captain of this team somewhere in the 7th round. Turns out to be Henrik Zetterberg, you know? We're going to go draft this Swedish defenseman, and he's going to turn out to be really, really great. Next thing you know, he revolutionizes the position. You know what I'm saying? It just, this draft, even with their first overall pick, taking Rasmussen, even that pick was said to be a stretch. There were guys who were supposed to be better and taken before him, and yet the Red Wings sat there and reached on that pick. It just shows, I think it goes to show that Ken Holland's a little bit out of his league. And I think you're starting to see that some of the rumors and some of the speculation that Bowman, Devellano, Jim Nill used to sit there and control everything, and the guy who was just kind of the figurehead was Ken Holland. The guy who just kind of sat there and he would either take the blows and he would take the praise. That was Ken Holland. Everybody else was doing all the work. If you noticed when Jim Nill left the Red Wings and went over to Dallas, if you go back and you look at all the players that Jim Nill's kind of brought in, look at how many Red Wings or former Red Wings he brought in. Guys who he went out, grabbed, and they made an immediate impact on that roster. You know, you look at guys like that. You look at guys who have come from this organization, really smart hockey minds. Look at who came from this organization, and look at the players that were former Red Wings that would follow those guys. It makes you kind of scratch your head because you're like, why did Ken Holland get rid of that guy? What's going on there? And I think Ken Holland's a little bit out of touch. I don't think he necessarily understands what especially how this new NHL, and you say new NHL with finger quotes, how it's evolved. It's much more of a game about speed, quickness, puck movement, getting shots on the net. And if you look at their draft class, a whole bunch of big bruising guys. You know, it's guys. There was one report on one of the prospects. The guy can hardly skate. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, what? I mean, he can hardly skate. This is the new NHL. You're supposed to be able to fly up and down the rink. You know, I mean, go put on a highlight tape of Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews. I don't know. Pick any other guy who's come out who's been really good as like Tyler Johnson. You know what I'm saying? Go put on their tapes. All those guys, they're not necessarily big guys, but they're all guys who can get up and down the ice, can sit there, create in space, and can get shots. Every single one of them. And Ken Holland's going out there drafting guys who are like 6'7", and they sit there and they move like Frankenstein on skates. What are we doing?
So as fans, where do we sit now? Are we all just selling on Ken Holland, just going, okay, we all now are to believe that this is really bad and that this team is never going to make it back to the playoffs? Because it just kind of seems like the goal right now is just to put together some talent, to get to the postseason, to placate the fans, open the arena with some fanfare, and then go from there. Because it doesn't seem like right now the long-term plan is really something that a lot of fans agree with. But it does seem like there is a long-term plan, and you kind of know now who are the pieces that are going to be involved in that. But right now, when you look at it for the upcoming season, you got 2 goaltenders that nobody even knows what they're capable of doing. You got forwards that regressed in 2016. You got guys that you thought were going to be cornerstones, and you've given contracts to guys that haven't produced. So all in all, the stock in terms of the fans is very low, and many people want Kenny Holland gone, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. I mean, you basically would have to have like a 40-point season next year in order for Ken Holland to be fired. So
I don't know about that. I think Ken Holland's done after this year. I think he's got 1 year left.
So?
Yeah, I think he's got 1 year left on his contract. He was real instrumental in getting this new stadium built. I think they're going to give him his first year here, and then after that, he's gone. He hasn't proven anything in the last, not since 2009. And even 2009, he basically rode on the backs of what happened in 2008 to make it to that Stanley Cup final when they ended up losing to Pittsburgh. And then after that, where has this team been? Where's this team been? It's been almost a decade, and this team is not relevant anymore. If you go, I was surprised. A couple weeks ago, Bravada release their odds for winning the Stanley Cup. It was right after the Stanley Cup Finals, and Bravada came out and released their rankings. And do you realize Detroit was, I believe they were 5th from the bottom? Oh. Do you remember the last time Detroit's been 5th from the bottom in anything like that? It's been forever. This team is irrelevant right now. Absolutely irrelevant. You've got nobody on this team. Can you name a Red Wing that you actually like? One that you're like, yes, that's my Red Wing. That's my guy. I want to go buy his jersey. I want to go buy his T-shirt. I want to sit there and I want to wear it. Can you name anybody that you would sit there and you would pay good money for to go and watch?
Oh, no.
Exactly. There's nobody on this team that you actually care about. I don't give 2 craps. Like, I like Athanasiou, but I don't give 2 craps about him, right? I don't care about Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin, I think, is a fraud at this point. I haven't seen any maturation from him. I haven't seen anything. Dylan Larkin likes to sit there and skate circles around the perimeter, does not cut to the middle, and does not generate good angle shots. You know what that does? That sets everybody else up who's sitting there crashing in the net or trying to get in position. It sets them up to fail. Mantha. I haven't seen enough from Mantha. Mantha's so up and down, and whether it be Blashill sitting there benching him, or whether it be a decision by Ken Holland to tell Blashill to bench him because he's not playing enough defense, or he's not doing this, or he's not doing that, whatever it may be, they're not doing enough of it. Look at a guy like Thomas Jericho. Thomas Jericho went to Chicago, and he said he showed up there, and next thing you know, the guy starts producing. He was like, when I'm in Detroit, they sit there, they hinder your creativity. The new NHL is all about being creative. It's all about skating. It's all about generating shots. That's all it is. That's all it is. And then you sit there, you bring these guys in, and you force them to play an archaic system where you're not generating any shots, you're not scoring any goals. And look, the goalies in the new NHL, honestly, they're not that great. And they keep shrinking their equipment down. And you know why? It's to generate more goal scoring. You know how you generate more goal scoring? You put pucks on the net and you crash the net. That's all you got to do. Okay, that's it.
So, in essence, we obviously are seeing that Kenny Holland maybe is not in touch with the league in terms of getting younger, faster players. The goaltending situation's in flux. The defense doesn't seem to be that much improved.
Oh, the defense is trash.
So when you look at it, what do the Red Wings need to do? If you were in charge of the Wings, what do they need to do to kind of put this back together in terms of formulating a plan to get back not only to the playoffs, but to Stanley Cup contention where everybody wants them to be? Because it looks like Kenny Holland's probably not going to be the guy in charge in the next couple of years to put this back together. What does this Wing team basically need? What are their major deficiencies?
This is going to be a long-term deal. This is nothing that you can fix in 2 seasons. It just isn't going to work that way. You're looking at least 5 seasons where you've got to sit there and you've got to really start to generate some talent. You got to bring up some younger talent. So you've got kids in your minor league system. They just sat there and they just went on to win a Calder Cup. Some of those guys have to come up. I don't care if they're displacing veterans on this team. You know, older players have to go. Younger guys have to come up, and they've got to start to earn their stripes. You have to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Just because they're not sitting there back checking hard enough on a play, You can't just sit there and bench them for a whole period, you know? You pull them off to the side and you say, that's not allowed in this league. You can't do that. You got to talk to them. You got to communicate to them. All right, and then you put them back out there and you see what happens. But you got to let the young kids play. Young kids are going to make mistakes. That's why they're young. That's what happens. It's how you learn. You learn by making mistakes. You said it when we opened this podcast. You talked about it. You make mistakes for a reason. You learn from them. That's what you do. So you put the young kids out there. You let them make their mistakes. I think Ken Holland really screwed things up by not protecting certain players and sitting there leaving other guys open. I mean, in the end, it didn't really hurt this team, but I thought you could have really got your salary cap in a much better spot by protecting other players and releasing some of these more high-priced veterans that you have on your team. So you got to get your books in order, let the young kids come up and play, and then you really need to sit there and start to focus on your defense. Your defense is brutal. Brutal. I mean, Dan DeKaiser on any other good team would maybe be your fourth defenseman. Maybe. Here in Detroit, he's your second defenseman. And that's because Mike Green's your first. And the only reason Mike Green's your first is because Mike Green can score. Mike Green's a total liability in the defensive zone. You know, Mike Green would be a nice pairing with an actual number one. He could be a solid number two because he could make the mistakes and the number one would fix them for him. And that's how you could get by with that. While Dan DeKaiser was, I don't know, your number four, your number five defenseman. You need to sit there. You really need to improve this defense. If you improve this defense, next thing you know, goaltenders look really good. And we're going to talk about a goaltender who looked really good with really good defense in front of him. You know, a guy who possibly is considered for the Hall of Fame in the NHL. You know, so you fix the defense in front of the goaltending. Guess what? Pucks don't get by. Pucks don't score because you got guys blocking shots. You got guys disrupting plays. You got guys lifting sticks. You got guys tying up other guys and moving the puck out. And then you know what? You get some goal scorers on that defensive line. They're going to start putting pucks in the net. You know what happens when you start scoring goals? You start winning games.
So the news obviously was made, you know, in terms of the Hall of Fame inductions, and many people were a little bit up in arms and a little bit surprised that a guy that has the numbers, just based upon the others that are in the Hall of Fame, did not earn his spot. Chris Osgood, not named to the Hall of Fame. I was a little bit surprised. Maybe you look at it and you say, you know, first ballot, he doesn't get an opportunity the first go around because of the fact that he is a little bit judged differently because of the fact he was on some super teams, so he might not get the credit that he deserves. But unfortunately, you look at it and you say, throughout the length of his career, he had some big games. He had several big performances, and you can't discount a guy that's won multiple cups because there have been several goaltenders that have been on some great teams that never won a Stanley Cup or even got to the Stanley Cup final. So I don't think you hold that against Chris Osgood when you look at evaluating the total length of his career. Over 400 victories, an above average goals against average. I feel like he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm curious as to why you think he maybe wasn't, and should we be outraged?
I think there should be a little bit of outrage, and this is the thing, right? So Chris Osgood came up with a quality core of goaltenders. Patrick Waugh was probably number one. Dominic Hasek, probably number two. You had Ed Belfour, who was a stud, super solid. Mike Richter was in the mix, but Mike Richter was kind of towards the end there. He was a solid goaltender, especially if you were a United States hockey fan. And then it was basically Chris Osgood. I mean, he was in that upper echelon. Oh, Martin Brodeur. Martin Brodeur was probably number three. He was right there in that mix with those goaltenders. I don't understand why he's not considered. I mean, he has more wins than Dominic Hasek. He's got, I believe he's got a better goals against than Dominic Hasek. He scored a goal, which something those other goaltenders I mentioned didn't do. So, yeah, there should be some outrage. I do think that what it kind of comes down to is if you look at his overall save percentage, it wasn't very good. Again, he had a very good defense in front of him. They sat there, they blocked a lot of shots, and they prevented a lot of shots from coming through. There were times where he would end up giving up big goals. I'm reminded of that goal against, I think it was, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but I just envisioned seeing it. It was against the San Jose Sharks, where it was shot in from center and it scored on him, you know? He had a couple goals like that. So that ends up tarnishing his legacy a little bit. He never had that one career-defining moment. Like, if they would have sat there and they'd have won that 2009 Stanley Cup, I think he would have won the Conn Smythe, and you could have been like, yeah, that was his
surefire
moment.
First ballot.
Exactly. He never had that one career-defining moment. He had multiple Stanley Cups. He helped move a brutal New York Islanders team into the playoffs and get them on a little bit of a playoff run. He helped the St. Louis Blues when the St. Louis Blues were absolute trash get into the playoffs and get on a little bit of a run as well. So he did some good things, and he did a lot of heavy lifting for a lot of teams. He just never had that one moment. And again, he played, like you said, on super teams. That 2002 team was just chocked full of talent, you know? That 2008 team, again, loaded with talent. And if you remember that 2008 Stanley Cup, he was one of the main reasons you won that. You sat there early on against the series against Nashville. Dominic Hasek sat there and blew a couple games for you. You had to sit there and go to your backup goaltender who never relinquished the spot. That backup goaltender was Chris Osgood. Turn around 2009, that guy's helping carrying you through the playoffs, and you're basically, 2 centimeters short from going into overtime? I mean, you end up losing by 1 goal in Game 7? Come on, man. I think there should be a little bit of outrage. And look, I have this debate with a lot of my hockey friends, with a lot of the hockey gurus that I hang out with, and none of them like Chris Osgood. A lot of them don't agree that he should be there because they look at the team that played in front of him. But if you go purely based on numbers, his numbers show that he deserves to be in there. He's got over 400 wins, and that's basically the cutoff for goaltenders. You have over 400 wins, you should be there. And again, he sat there. He came up with the likes of guys like Patrick Waugh, Ed Belfour, Martin Brodeur, Dominic Hasek. He was in that ilk with those guys, you know, and those guys were all studs. I say those names and everybody gets all wet and tingly because those guys were awesome goaltenders in the NHL.
Do you think it's unfair that he's criticized for, potentially being on super teams because of the fact that, the Red Wings had such Hall of Fame talent? They had such strong leadership. Chris Osgood, really, I do feel like is undervalued in the grand scheme of things. I really do feel like he's on the level of a Patrick Waugh. He's on the level of some of the elite goaltenders, at least in the top maybe 10, maybe not top 5 of all time. But I do believe in terms of the fact of his career, the fact that he went to St. Louis and the Islanders and really stunk it up a little bit before he came back might have hurt.
He got them to playoffs, man.
He did.
He got those guys into the playoffs. Here's the thing: if I say I need you to pick a goaltender, right? I'll give you 2 options. All right, you pick. You tell me who you pick, and you tell me why. You can have Grant Fuhr, or you can have Chris Osgood. Who'd you take?
That's kind of a push. I was always a fan of Grant Fuhr. I felt like he was on some of those great Edmonton teams, but he was such a solid goaltender as well. But I don't think you could go wrong with either, but I would probably take Grant Fuhr.
You would take Grant Fuhr?
I would.
Okay, do you realize Grant Fuhr's goals against average is disgusting? Great, like Grant Fuhr as a goaltender.
But didn't he stay on way too long, and then his numbers got inflated at the tail end of his career?
When Grant Fuhr played hockey, he was giving up 7 goals a game. Yeah. He happened to play on an Edmonton Oilers team that was chock full of talent. You had guys like Mark Messier. You had Wayne Gretzky. I mean, you had guys that were for days on this roster, and they would sit there and they'd score 5 goals for you a game. You know what I'm saying? When he was winning Stanley Cups. Let me get you as soon as this computer stops freaking out here.
Yeah, but wasn't Osgood right there in the middle of the neutral zone trap where the game was much more defensive, a lot of clutching and grabbing, and the Devils basically in that era
he can't help
bogged up the game. Yeah, bogged up the game. But when Grant Fuhr played, he was in the era where the Oilers were scoring 5 and 7 goals a game, where defense wasn't really the big emphasis as it was when Osgood was playing. So that's why
he was giving up like 4 goals a game, dude. That's ridiculous. Okay. Absolutely bonkers.
Who's the next?
Let's see here.
Brodeur or Osgood?
Well, you're going to take Brodeur all day.
Take Brodeur,
yeah. It would be so like Patrick Waugh all day long, Brodeur all day long. Ed Belfour, I'd probably take Ed Belfour all day long, just because he's crazy. And then after that, I mean, him and Dominic Hasek have really similar numbers. Dominic Hasek always made the spectacular save. That's what his call to glory was. He always made the spectacular save. There's so many highlight reel films of him just sprawled out, kicking a leg up, and somehow getting a hold of the puck and keeping it out of the net. But their numbers, if you look at them, they're almost exactly the same. And I think Chris Osgood has 1 or maybe 2 more wins than Hasek does.
Okay.
So in that case, you'd probably take Hasek just because name recognition and value. So
I think Chris Osgood will be in the Hall of Fame eventually. He's doing a great job now as an analyst. I think that he's going to be well respected and continue to evolve because he's putting the same effort that he did in his pro career. And I just think that when the time comes, as more time passes, when we reflect on the Detroit Red Wings, I think Chris Osgood's favor will increase, especially nationwide. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. It just might take a couple tries.
Curtis Joseph or Chris Osgood?
Oh, Chris Osgood all day. I think
there you go.
Cujo was a mental head.
He was. He had much less team playing in front of him than Chris Osgood did. But at the same point, you're going to take Chris Osgood over Cujo because.
So without too much reproach, we can say top 10 all time NHL goaltender. Top 10, and you can debate top 5.
Top 10 all time. I would say top 10
Lower half,
in the
8, 9, 10?
in the current era.
Okay.
Because if you go back, I mean, you got to include Sawchuck. Yeah, you got to include Jacques Plante. You know, I mean, there are so many goaltenders from back in the day. And again, I don't know if those guys could do what these guys do now. And when you start arguing generations, it becomes really difficult. But I think if you go
upper echelon,
if you go recent, I think, yes, he's top 10 all day.
Okay. Before we get to the Doc and Jock Pro Wrestling Report, just a quick word regarding our supporters. Definitely check out those who support the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the free and easy way to support us. Go check out our website, click through the Amazon banner. You can check out tickets to any Detroit sporting event, or go visit the supporter and sponsor pages. That's the site where those that are supporting independent broadcasting have provided links that you can go check out their shows, their products and services, and we always appreciate those who support us. So definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's how independent broadcasting works, is we collaborate with those who support us, and we in turn definitely always support those who support us. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. All right, cuz. This week in wrestling, there was so many juicy things to talk about. My goodness. But we got to start right away with the segment that either you thought shit the bed or you thought was genius. And I want to get your opinion because I might have a clue what you're thinking, but I'm curious. Did WWE sell out in terms of their use of booking LeVar Ball and his family onto their preeminent show, WWE Raw? Because, unfortunately, for some good reasons and bad reasons, the show got a great amount of attention because Ball was on it. And some, like Curtis Axel, have already come out on Tuesday and said, what the hell did we just do? We got a program that's tailored for kids, and you got a 15-year-old kid with a live mic in his hand dropping the N-bomb. You got LeVar Ball really dropping kayfabe and making the organization look stupid by the way he was acting. You could have had Ball on the program, done it way different, and gotten the same maybe reaction, but in my opinion, you got to do it. LeVar Ball draws clicks, and unfortunately, in this day and age, whatever you can do to draw attention, just by saying the WWE had Ball on the program, in essence, he could have did really anything. I would have definitely had him do something different than whatever the hell he was trying to pull off. It kind of seemed like what we've been talking about, lazy all the way around. It kind of was just like, I can imagine the sheet. LeVar Ball, walk out. LeVar Ball, insult Miz. LeVar Ball, promote brand. I'm like, dude, first and foremost, you don't walk to the ring like that. Second of all, you don't start chanting like that. You look ridiculous. I would have just had him stand there, laugh, maybe not say anything. Maybe I would have had him, push the Miz, be a little bit physical, but not that. So in essence, I would have booked it differently, but I don't think the WWE sold out because that, if you're into that game, then you already are off the wagon because Floyd Mayweather punched one of your superstars who's 8 feet taller than him. So that wagon's already been passed when you got Floyd Mayweather and you paid him a boatload of money to show up at WrestleMania.
I don't know if WWE sold out. What they definitely did was they generated some conversation. I mean, we've been talking about this now for, 3-4 days. It's still going on. And it was all over the local NBC, Fox, ABC stations. It was all over the national stations. It was in the newspapers. It was everywhere, I mean, every time you opened up the internet, it was on the internet, So it generated, I think, what it was supposed to do. That being said, WWE had a different plan, and LeVar Ball went off script. According to reports, LeVar Ball was extremely difficult to work with in the back. He had his own vision and his own idea of what he wanted to do, and basically the Balls just totally deviated from it. That being said, there are videos online, like The Miz was infuriated by the way that whole segment went down. At the very end, when they were sitting there clearing the ring and setting up for the 6-man tag, there was a big Baller Brand t-shirt and mannequin, and The Miz just basically sat there and super kicked it halfway across the arena because he was so pissed off. But yeah, it was brutal, man. It was absolutely awful. And here's the thing. I really like Lonzo. I think Lonzo's a good kid. I think Lonzo has a good head on his shoulders. I think he gets it, right?
What's LaMelo thinking?
I think he understands. This is the thing. I think LaMelo is
like his dad?
Yes. And I don't want to crush a 15-year-old kid,
yeah,
but
right.
I'm about to crush a 15-year-old kid.
You can't say that.
I think he's buying into all the hype. I think he is trying to
Stop it.
Maybe become like his father. I don't know. I think he's on the same page as LeVar where it's all about me. All about me. Check me out. Look at what I'm doing. Look at us. You know, and if you go back and you listen to everything that LeVar said when he was sitting there introducing Lonzo, if I'm LaMelo, I'm feeling like this big because he's like the Baller Brand's greatest son. Like if I'm LaMelo, like, don't you love me too, Dad? And then he's gonna sit there and go out there and act like an ass.
With LaMelo,
and Lonzo shows up in slipper or sandals with socks on.
That
What's
was
going
classic.
on, dude?
But I would look at it
1999
like,
called.
I feel like if I was ever to go out there, you do get wrapped up in the universe, and you do get wrapped up that it's hype. But you just don't say the N-word. You just be like, whoop his ass, man. Let's go do it. So you do say something, but I don't think you realize, okay, I'm going to say something outrageous here, but I'm not going to say the N-word. So it's hard, too, because in that environment, you never know. You know, I think one of our dreams would be just to have some music played and walk out there. I would probably stand there at the ring and need someone to kind of push me down the ramp because I just would be shocked to hear the audience screaming and yelling and all that. But, you know, I think why people are so mad and frustrated is if LeVar Ball is difficult backstage and he's giving you any indication that he's not going to say what you tell him to say, you cut the segment.
You don't put him out there.
Don't cut the check.
You don't put him out there.
It's simple. We're paying you. Obviously, he got paid a check to show up. LeVar, easy. You want the check to clear? If you don't go by this or within reason, when you go to cash it, there'll be nothing there. You'll be in breach of contract. So you can't give a person a live mic on your program and just let them do it. You're on live television. You got sponsors. You got, you know, I'm sure WWE didn't want to put out a statement saying the views of LaMelo Ball do not reflect the company. You can't say those things. But at the same time, it does go into the notion that even bad press is good press. So it did the job, but I think it could have been delivered much more efficiently. And you could have even set up a fact where you could have brought him back in the future. Maybe you push The Miz, or you just have LaMelo kind of scoop behind The Miz, and you do kind of like a double move there where, you know, LaMelo gets on the ground and LeVar pushes him, and then they walk out of the ring. Now you can maybe set it up for WrestleMania. Instead, you got him looking like a clown, and you can't use him anymore.
Did you
it's
see
done.
when Dean Ambrose came out? He was like,
He was
what
shocked.
the F?
He
what
was
is
shocked.
going on?
Yeah, because he's wearing the shirt. So he's like, oh, God. So, you know, he did the job. They know, unfortunately, that's where it's one of those things where the boys get mad, but they know it's for the greater good of the company. They know they got to do things.
I don't think that did any good for the company. I mean,
look what CM Punk
talking about it, but
look what
still.
CM Punk railed on. Like, look, The Rock is to show up and get a $2 million check to show up for one night, and I'm busting my ass 300 nights a year for maybe $1.8 million. You're paying me less than that. But unfortunately, it's a complaint that you have, but it's for the greater good of the company. You got to get press and you got to get ratings. And that's unfortunately the name of the game. You got to sometimes do and say things for ratings. You just got to do it. Now, are you overt about it? Can you execute it differently? Yes. Can you guarantee that, you know, a guy like LeVar Ball is going to follow script? No, but that's why payment is important. Don't pay him if he doesn't follow through.
Did you understand any part of that segment? Like, I didn't understand where that segment was supposed to go. I didn't know how it was supposed to play out. Like, even with it getting derailed, I had no idea what the vision of that segment was.
It was terrible.
It was absolutely brutal.
But did you like how they used Samoa Joe to kind of destroy Brock Lesnar?
Dude, he choked the shit
That was
out
good.
of him,
It was
dude.
surprising. You didn't expect it to happen, especially when he kind of got in a confrontation with Paul Heyman. You thought Brock Lesnar was going to come out and handle his business. So the feud is elevating, and Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar are doing their job. And it's nice to see Brock Lesnar do the job. And that's what you're supposed to do. It's not always when Brock Lesnar show up does he just stand in the ring and let Paul Heyman do a promo. Sometimes you got to take an ass whooping, and he did, and it's hyping up the pay-per-view quite well. I'm looking forward to that matchup.
This is the thing. Brock Lesnar will do the job, and Brock Lesnar will put somebody over if he sees dollar signs. If he thinks that he can make some money, he will sit there and he'll do the job for you. Otherwise,
he'll ask why, and he won't do it.
Yeah, it'll be exactly like that. The Goldberg Brock Lesnar number one, where they sat there and they wrestled, and it was absolutely brutal.
It was brutal, right? What was your overall takeaway from Raw? I thought it had some great moments, but also some moments that you go, okay, it's like a hijacked show. It's not one of the shows that, you know, when you look at it, if you're trying to compete with SmackDown, if you're trying to put on good quality stuff, right now Raw is a DVR program that you can kind of skip through half of it by just kind of seeing the segment and going forward. But I thought the coolest moment was seeing Finn Balor with the Hardy Boys, but it just again leads us all to believe they're slowing down the epic rise of a guy that's a superstar talent. You got the guy, and you're kind of slowing him down by putting him in 6-man tags and irrelevant matchups. I don't think this is the way to go with Finn Balor.
It's so funny that you say that, because I was sitting there watching it, and I looked at my wife and I was like, they're burying this guy.
Yeah.
And burying is probably not the right term for it. But
they're slowing his progress.
But yeah. You're going to sit there and you're going to match this guy up against Elias Sampson?
Come on.
Like who?
Yeah.
What? Like, what are we doing? This guy was the very first inaugural WWE Universal Mars Galactic Space Warrior champion.
Yes.
And this is a guy who is a star. He is a star. He is a stud.
Yes.
And you're going to sit there and you're going to put him in a match against that guy. And look, nothing against Elias Sampson, all right? Nothing against him. But he's not on the same level, you know? And you sit there and you totally discredited everything Finn Balor was and is about when there was some rumors and speculation that he might be facing Brock instead of Joe. You know, oh, he's too small. Oh, he's too small. How would he match up? He's so small. You know, like, you don't got to tell us that. Like, we've got eyes. We can see that he's a little bit of he has a slight build and he's not a real tall guy. We can see this. You don't got to tell us every single time we turn on the damn TV. But the guy is a stud in the ring and he's so charismatic. It just, especially when he does the demon paint, it's so over. And yet you're going to sit there and you're going to basically strap anchors to his legs and just hold him down. I don't get it, man.
The best part of Raw, obviously, was the women's match. You rightfully cement Sasha Banks as the number one contender. It was a great matchup. The worst moment, probably outside of LeVar Ball, was, again, the entire Enzo and Cass segment. Why tease a reunification?
Oh, no, it was great.
That was stupid.
My wife was hooked. She
believed it?
Oh, yeah. I was like, wait for it. And she's like, no, they're back together. I was like, you're an idiot. You have no idea how they do these things. Wait for it. And then next thing you know, Enzo's getting chucked across the freaking arena.
Exactly.
It was no bueno.
Yeah, no, I think that they could have just had him do it in the ring, or again, it's like nobody believed it. They did carry out and have people suspend disbelief for a few seconds there by having him walk all the way up to the ramp. But, you know, I guess people are now speculating and talking about where Enzo and Cass as a tag team rank in terms of hype versus bust, but many people just say that, you know, you broke them up before you even gave them a title run.
Yeah.
So
before we go to SmackDown, I don't know if you've noticed this with Bayley or not. I just want to bring this to your attention so maybe you watch over the coming weeks or whatever, and then maybe you can get back to me on it. I think we see a little bit more of an aggressive nature coming from Bayley.
Yes, you have to.
I think now they're starting to. They basically tore her down and destroyed her. I think now they're trying to rebuild her up very slowly. A couple weeks ago when she sat there and she entered the ring and she basically cleared house, and it took all four of the girls to sit there and get Nia Jax out. You've seen a much more aggressive, more cunning Bayley. And when she was the first pick for this gauntlet match, she sat there and she just started firing on Nia Jax, and she was just going at it. She probably gave Nia Jax the best match besides Sasha Banks coming out. And like you said, Sasha Banks cements herself as the number one contender now for Alexa Bliss's title. But yeah, I think you're seeing more of a aggressive-natured Bayley, and I think that's going to do her well. I think it's going to help her character. It needs to get elevated.
Now, we go over to SmackDown, and you say, wow, what a well-written show. What a show that was paced properly. And again, I thought it was executed perfectly. You have Carmella win the women's Money in the Bank match in a classic 27 to 30-minute match. A lot of high spots, a lot of great action. You had the swerve where you thought that Becky Lynch was going to climb up the ladder and win the thing, only to have Carmelo win the thing again, rightfully. Everybody gets the visual of the woman climbing up the ladder. You had the spot that basically everybody is saying, that's the match you should have put on a pay-per-view. But if you extended it out and we got to see it, it was great. The low moment of SmackDown was, I think, the destruction of a gimmick that could have went somewhere. You don't have the Hype Brothers face the Usos, and you put them on a match, and then right from the commercial, they get squashed. In essence, you buried the gimmick. You just buried them against a team that you thought you could have had a program with. So other than that, really, I thought the Lana match is being done and told right. She is green. That's why Naomi keeps kicking her ass, and you kind of can see the storyline being told of a new young wrestler trying to work her way up to win the title. She's not ready. And Naomi has been doing a great job of carrying her in these matches, so it was entertaining. And then I thought one of my favorite segments outside of the women's match was the Randy Orton Jinder Mahal promo. Now, Jinder Mahal continues to flub his words during his promos. He kind of is really having a hard time with the script, but the Punjabi prison match kind of is going to be exciting. You know, if you're going to go down that road and have Randy Orton, Jinder Mahal 3, I guess you could add such a wacky gimmick. I don't really personally want to see Randy Orton. I think you could give Jinder Mahal another opponent, let him feature somebody else. But if you're going to do it and you're going to have a weird match, it was cool to see because now after this recording, I'm going to turn on the network and watch the first Punjabi match because I never even heard of it. I never knew the Great Khali was in something called a Punjabi prison match. So many people panned it, but it seems interesting to me. So I'm curious.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this works out in
Punjabi prison.
How it ends up happening. I'm so over the whole Randy Orton thing.
It's done. It's dumb.
The best meme I seen on Facebook, I think, it was Randy Orton looking at Shane being like, do you know what it's like to have your family disrespected? And Shane looking back at Randy being like, yeah, you punted my dad in the head and then you DDT'd my sister.
Exactly.
So funny. Going back to the women's match, the Money in the Bank match, I think it's safe to say that the way they originally scripted everything for Carmella to win
was done wrong.
No, well, it was done wrong, but that was their original plan. That's what they wanted. They wanted that. She came out, she cut the great promo, she got the heel heat, and then they changed course because everybody else got pissed off and everybody bitched about it. So they sat there and they're like, all right, cool, we'll just redo it and we'll give it back to her.
Yeah, same difference, right?
It's so dumb to sit there and just, based upon what people say and how upset people get, you sit there and you sway how you're going to do things and how you're going to script stuff and how you're going to lay things out. She did such a great job coming back the following night, getting such great heel heat, and then you basically took it all away by taking the briefcase away from her and making her do this match again. And yeah, it was a good match. It was really good, but you didn't have to do that. There was no point for you to do that. Like, why? Just because a couple people got pissed off and outraged? So now Carmella technically is the first and the second winner of the Money in the Bank match in, 2 weeks and a day?
Exactly.
Come on, man. Get the hell out of here.
Now, something has been evolving and something that I'm looking at in terms of the presentation. I feel like Shinsuke Nakamura, in terms of his credibility in the ring,
so glad you brought this up.
Is unbelievable, okay? But there's a problem.
He's unbelievable?
No, he's unbelievable as a talent in terms of the pedigree that he brings to the ring, the respect, the love that he brings internationally, but there's a problem.
Yes, his pedigree is.
Yeah, the problem is that...
You're not seeing it in the ring.
You're not seeing it in the ring enough. And
he's an entrance. That's all he is.
Yes. And two is that I don't think you want him trying to read scripted English. Okay, so when you stick a microphone in his face, I don't know if it's his voice, his cadence, or the fact that probably he's thinking about, 10 seconds over every word that he's going to spew. The man don't speak English. So fine. Perfect. He's a perfect candidate for a top-of-the-line mouthpiece. Either a woman or a man where he can just sit there and have the passion in his own native language. You turn, and there's someone behind him that can even just say 4 words. He will kick your ass. And he can make it a bit, too, where he's talking like for 2 minutes, and the interpreter says 5 words. But Shinsuke Nakamura needs a manager because of the fact when he talks, I'm not buying it. I'm not believing it. It sounds corny, and it isn't done and executed properly. And second of all, knowing that, he doesn't need to speak. He can be a mystery a little bit and go out there and kick ass because not everybody needs to be Enzo. I know that's part of the entire package and the gimmick. Talk, wrestle, hype. But Shinsuke didn't come in as a nobody and built himself up. He came in from an established program and people know him. And they saw him in NXT. So you don't really need to have him do a whole heck of a lot of promos. And if you do, get him a woman. Get him a hype woman. Get him somebody that you're not utilizing and let her talk for him and let him kick ass in the ring. Every week that a live Smackdown's going down, he needs to be in the ring.
I agree. I think the way he's been booked has been absolutely atrocious. It's been freaking brutal from day one. And you're right. If you were able to sit there and pair him with a guy like a Mr. Fuji, that would be great.
Or a Bobby Heenan back in the day.
Yes.
Grabbing onto a superstar. That'd be cool, right?
Anybody, somebody. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying?
Kind of a weird mix. Maybe a Jimmy Hart. Shinsuke!
Jimmy Hart would be great. But, you're absolutely right. And if you were to book him almost mysteriously, right, you have this great entrance. You have him really not say a whole lot. Maybe just do some facial features. He does a lot with his face.
Yeah. Let
him do some stuff with his face where either he looks totally aloof or he looks totally disinterested. Something. Anything else. But you're right. Having him read from a script, it sounds like me trying to read a children's book. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? And the dog
Spit
goes...
it out.
Right. And the dog goes...
Don't
woof,
fear
woof.
Exactly.
Don't
fear the Nakamura.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's the thing. If you've seen any of his actual matches from New Japan, they're amazing.
They're intense.
amazing.
They're intense, right?
It's awesome. And you have totally neutered this guy. You have taken his balls off of him, and now you have forced him to sit there and totally think about everything he's going to do before he does it. You sit there, you pair him with a guy like Dolph Ziggler, and you make him go 26 minutes with Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler gets buried by everybody. Dolph Ziggler gets beat by girls. And now you got to make Nakamura fight him for 26 minutes? Mind you, 18 of the 26 minutes, Dolph's just giving it to him. Giving it to him hard. So what are we supposed to believe here? You know, and I feel bad for Dolph because I think he's a really good wrestler. I think he's a great athlete.
Classic mid-card guy right now. Classic.
Yeah. He's never been able to sit there and rise above him. The way they book him, they keep him buried. What am I supposed to believe? Nakamura can barely beat a mid-card guy? A mid-card guy who everybody else beats? What? Mm-hmm. Again, crappy booking, awful writing, poorly produced. It's just bad. It's not good. And look, if you're going to lead me to believe that we're going to have Nakamura versus AJ Styles building to at some point, right? You've already seen glimpses of it, and you know WWE wants to do it because New Japan did it, and it was outstanding. So you know WWE wants to do it at some point. How are we going to get there? Because right now, I'm not buying into Nakamura anymore. I was cool with him when he first came on because I loved the entrance. I thought he was great. I watched NXT. I thought he was outstanding in NXT. And now we're here. And what we have is we have a guy who has a really cool entrance, which Kevin Dunn has gone and effed up royally by throwing fireworks in the background of it. You don't need that. It sounds stupid. You ruin it. Comes to the ring, does his little thing when he comes to the ring. It's cool. It's all right. And then the match starts. And then I'm kind of like, I don't care anymore. I just don't. So what are we doing with this guy? Or then we sit there and we have a really awful background host sit there and interview the guy, and she normally messes up her lines, and he messes up his lines, and it's just absolutely atrocious. It's like two people who can't speak trying to have a conversation. You just want to kick your own self in the head. It's awful.
Yeah, one of those things where we got to continue to see how Nakamura is evolved, and if you want to put him in a program with AJ Styles, you got to make him deliver, and you got to make him talk properly to build up any matchup that he's going to have. All right, sir, you have some quick news and notes regarding a potential superstar matchup, number 3?
Possibly. Before that, though, Paige and Alberto Del Rio, or El Patron, depending on which brand you're watching, they broke up again. Oh, so shocker, right? I know. Chris Jericho is coming back to WWE. That makes me excited. I hope you're excited. He'll be doing some house shows starting June 30th. So this Friday, he'll be doing some house shows. So he'll be working his way back onto WWE television. And like you alluded to, we've got the G1 starting on July 1st. That'll be taking place. You can catch some of it on Access TV. Okada Omega 3 is supposed to take place at the G1. It's really weird the way they do this. They sit there and they basically bracket it. So you've got you've got one group over here and you got one group over here. They are in the same group. At some point they're gonna meet up. So basically it's like a giant round robin tournament, and you sit there, you win, you move on, you win, you move on, you win, you move on, all the way up to the final. So it's gonna be pretty cool. It should be interesting. Look, if you haven't had a chance to see Okada Omega 1, Okada Omega 2, you're missing out. You got to check them out. They're outstanding. Some of the best matches I've seen in a long, long time. Definitely two of my favorite matches, those first two matches that they've had. So I can't wait for this.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to catching up with you after the holiday break. Slow things down for me at the practice and the podcast. I think we're going to do probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 live shows next week, scaling it down from the 6 that we normally do. So everyone's going to take some time, regroup, maybe enjoy some sports without podcasting and things like that. But you can definitely follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. There'll always be great stuff there. And look for us after the break as we have some great news and things developing, as always, with the podcast. So it's fun times ahead, and I'm looking forward to it. No doubt about it. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Everybody, have a great 4th. We'll catch you next Thursday.
Go Toledo Mud Hens, because the Tigers suck.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. It didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.